Hey guys, this is Sam, and it is time for another Monday Musing. This time it's a show report. Yes, this weekend I was at Cardiff Independent Comic Expo, aka CICE, in the Cardiff Masonic Hall. Now, as you can already hear, I've got a bit of con crud, so you'll excuse me if we change from the normal format a little. There might be a couple of jump cuts where I just get rid of any nastiness, like if I have a coughing fit or need to blow my nose or just anything gross like that. Also, I'm going to apologize in advance because there are so many things I want to mention and so many people that I want to give shout outs to that I may well forget someone somewhere. And if I forget you, I truly do apologize. There's also some pickups I want to go through. I've actually got those down there. It's going to be really interesting editing all of this. It is Monday evening, it's after work, and yeah, I'm just hoping I can get all of this edited and uploaded before it hits midnight so that it still counts as Monday. So, although I've got a few hours as I record this, so fingers crossed. Anyway, let's start. So, Cardiff Independent Comic Expo, I went up on the Friday. The actual convention wasn't starting until Saturday, but I'm reliant on public transport, so I couldn't get to Cardiff from where I live early enough for setup, so I had to go up the day before. What that did mean was that I got to look around Cardiff, and Cardiff is always a wonderful, beautiful town. Absolutely love going to Cardiff. It's always a pleasure. Got to check out a few sites on the Friday ahead of the show, which really helped sort of make a weekend of it. I sort of, took the Friday off work and thought, yeah, we're going to have some fun. So shortly after I got into Cardiff, I heard from Steve Tanner behind the wonderful book Flintlock. We met up for a chat and a drink. We popped into Forbidden Planet International. I just generally hung out and set the world to rights. It was a good time. We then had Dan Harris, who's part of Attic Studios. You'll know him from Loose Cannon, Druid Investigations, and Bruce Outback, to name but a few. He met up with us. We went for basically more beers in first a place called the Pig and Wig, I believe it was called. And then from there we went on to Kong's, which is a barcade, which is basically a pub and an arcade sort of squished and merged together. That was interesting. We were talking a lot about how they were either Windows XP computers running a MAME emulator or a Raspberry Pi emulation station in an arcade housing, because although the aspect ratio was correct for the games, 4:3 games are still in 4:3, the pixels were not resized equally, so it wasn't a ×2 multiplier. So you had some pixels that were wider or taller than other pixels, so then when you moved around the screen it caught shimmering and all sorts of other gamey related terms that I'm not going to bore you with too much, but even things like the frame rate were inconsistent on them. It was clearly they were not original arcade machines, but we had fun all the same. Steve joined us again for that. We had Dan's girlfriend Emily, who was absolutely lovely. She came and joined us as well. And yeah, it was a really good evening. We got back to the hotel, which was just your standard Premier in Cardiff City South. Was really lucky in that there was a beer next door to it, a pub next door to it, which had beer, and opposite the road was a Subway, and even the guys on the reception desk were like, yeah, we do breakfast and you can order food in the day, but to be honest, there's a Subway right there, so you can either, pay £9 for breakfast with us or go across the road and get like a £2.50 breakfast sub. It's really up to you. So that was, pretty obvious. Room, pretty standard. Stay, pretty standard. Really couldn't say much about that. It's a Premier Inn. You get exactly what you expect at a Premier Inn. And I should have some B-roll to throw into all this as well. You want to hear about the convention, though. So the convention sort of got up first thing Saturday morning, 6 a.m. 6 a.m. Like, I had my alarm set for a lie-in because the convention setup wasn't until 8. So had that all set up, and my body clock still got me up at 6 anyway, which, to be fair, is half an hour later than I'd usually get. I usually get up 5:30 for work. Any rate, got up, had time to draw a Green Ranger for practice in the hotel room, and then went on, got a breakfast sub, as you do, and then went to get set up for the show, basically. So it only took about half an hour to get set up. I will say slightly concerned at how I just sort of walked into the venue. No one really checked me. I got sort of into the venue, up the stairs to where I thought my table might be, and then Iz McAuliffe, who runs the convention, organises the convention, sort of popped her head around the corner and went, "Hi, I'm really hoping you're supposed to be here." So she showed me to where my table was, very friendly, couldn't fault her there. Table was fine. For those who don't know, the Cardiff Masonic Hall, you sort of come in and there's an entrance sort of lobby, which is where they had a couple of like back issues and Funko Pop guys. There's the big sort of posh hall immediately on your right as you come in. That was where a lot of indie guys were. Then you sort of go up the stairs, and as you come up the stairs, there's a room immediately on your left, which had more indies in. A room straight ahead of you, which was sort of a hodgepodge, a couple of indies, a couple of dealers, which I was in there. And then if you come up the stairs directly behind you was sort of a long blue room that had more indies and some video game guys in. And then there was some more video game people downstairs. They were in like a little side room with retro consoles. So it was split across a lot of different rooms, so it was a fair bit to see. From the outside, the venue looks quite unassuming. I went last year as a punter, so thankfully I knew where to go this time. But I think you could easily miss it. And I'm not sure, but that building strikes me as one that's probably listed, and I would imagine there are restrictions around hanging any banners or making it more obvious that, yes, this is the venue, yes, you found us, we are here. So, at any rate, setup only took about half an hour. Really stripped it back this time. I haven't sold at a convention in about 11 months for various reasons I'm not going to go into today, but maybe a future Monday Musing. That was about half an hour. Just tried a really simple approach this time, which was comics, and more comics. So didn't do prints. Commissions weren't on the day. They were sort of, you could pre-order them before the show and pick them up at the show, which no one chose to do. Or you could order them at the show for me to post out after the show, which no one chose to do. So we didn't take any commissions. However, that's neither here nor there. So focus very, very strongly on the comics, because ultimately that's what I want people to walk away with. And actually, it was nice not to lug around like a bunch of banner sands and grid wall and all this other shite that I usually carry, especially again with the public transport and everything else. And being upstairs in that venue, actually, I believe there is a lift, but I did not want to carry too much up those stairs. I've managed to get all of it down into one suitcase, which I'm quite proud of. Nick Angel, who does 7 String, he's part of Big Punch Studios with John Locke. He came over at one point to have a chat with me and complimented the focus on, consumers can either buy comics or buy comics, so that increases the likelihood that they'll buy a comic. And he actually quite liked how, just straight and to the point it was, and even said he didn't realise I had that many books out at this point. So, no, I think it did its job. I think it was quite clear to say, I'm here, I do comics, that's me. And actually to forget about the distractions of prints or t-shirts or all this other stuff. So that was fine. The guy next to me was like a row of 4 tables, and I was initially like, oh no, what am I next to? And then like all these pieces of merch and back issues started coming up. I was like, oh, what am I next to? Because famously, people always report if you're next to like a big merch store, you kind of get overshadowed and forgotten about. But actually, it's Mike Allwood, who used to do the Bristol Comic Con, which is now sadly no longer running. And he used to co-run Cardiff with Iz, but he's stepped back now and is flying solo. Could not have been next to a nicer guy. Absolute gentleman. Had a good laugh with him. Guy can crack a joke. And he was mostly selling like back issues from like personal collections and that sort of thing. And then there was another guy with him who was sort of having a bit of a clear out from what I believe was a shop at one point. And they cleaned house. I mean, their prices were ridiculously low. I'm not surprised they cleaned house. They've got something in my pickups, actually. So no, had a really fun time behind the table. To my left was Sam Rhodes, and there was a woman with him whose name has completely escaped me right now, and I feel really bad about that. But Silicon Heart is their comic. And they sold out of their issue 1 during the day. They did really, really well. It was quite interesting because I feel quite rusty with conventions. I sort of stuck to my, hi, are you enjoying yourself? Feel free to have a flick through any of the books. And then sort of the pre-written pitch for that book, should they flick more than a couple of pages. I'll be honest, I didn't have a lot of success with that. We'll get to the sales figures later, because that's something I do want to do, is be open about the money side of things, because I've got no issues with money. I don't do this for the money. If I did this for the money, I'd have stopped a very long time ago. And there were some discussions, actually, that came out of today, which I think were very interesting, particularly concerning money. But no, I think it was interesting watching Sam, because he had a very similar pitch to me, only he wasn't so much waiting for them to come to him. He was, you know, if people were walking past or exiting the table, he would say, would you like to take a look at a comic? And, you know, to his credit, a lot of people did actually sort of turn around and go, you know what, yeah, there's no harm in looking. What am I losing by looking? So actually to have the confidence to do that and maybe be a bit more proactive is something I can take away from his pitch. Outside of that, his pitch seemed very similar to mine, only his clearly worked a lot better than mine did. Maybe it's my face. I don't know. And there was someone opposite, which was Richard something, who was in a Spider-Gwen top. Didn't really seem all that busy. I'm not entirely sure what his book or anything was. I didn't get a chance to properly check his stall out, I must admit. So, during the day, I did take a break at one point just to, see who was about and do some pickups. So, I popped downstairs where, the majority of the other indies were, and in there I saw Vince Hunt, who is, of course, part of the Awesome Comics podcast, and from him, we got a badge. Now, I'm not sure. That's probably going to be in focus, isn't it? So, Small Press Comics are awesome. So, these are new badges that they had specifically for Cardiff. So, proudly wore that for the rest of the day. Speaking of the Awesome Comics podcast, Tony came over and had a chat with us on a couple of occasions. And he seemed to be moderating a lot of panels. There were a lot of panels this year. They sound like really good panels. Everyone was having a lot of fun at the panels by all accounts. But of course, manning a table and manning it solo, I couldn't exactly get to any of the panels, so I didn't get to see any of them firsthand. But hopefully they'll go up on YouTube or something. I really hope that will turn out to be the case. Both Vince and Tony were awesome company, as always. Can't fault either of them. We also saw down there... Sorry, I have to lean to get the pickups. Sarah Millman, who is... That leaflet is the wrong way around. Sarah Millman, who is currently kickstarting NPCT issue 3. I absolutely adored issue 1. So issue 2 was, pretty much on top of my list to pick up. And when I got home, it was the first thing I read. I'm going to give this a proper review. Sarah's really knocking it out of the park. Issue 3 should be out in just 6 weeks' time. She's now doing this full-time, making a proper go of it. And I think the community as a whole could not be prouder of her. She's doing fantastically well. See, I can praise people. We then have Mulp, issue 2. So this is Matt Gibbs and Sarah Dunkerton. So obviously both at the show. Second time meeting Sarah. First time meeting Matt, must admit. And yeah, this is another case of really liked issue 1. Now, issue 1 I admittedly took a bit of a punt on. I wasn't sure. Like, when I looked at the cover initially, I thought it was like The Rescuers meets Indiana Jones. And blasphemy here, I know. I'm not overly keen on either Indiana Jones or The Rescuers. But I really loved issue 1 of Mulp. So, yeah, I picked up issue 2. It's on my reading pile next to my bed. I want to get to this really soon, because it's amazing. I'll give it a proper review probably at some point. Right, so that was all of my small press pickups. Ultimately, there were other people there, like Sean Jefferson with Smoosh, and, you know, obviously Dan Harris with Loose Cannon and the other bits I mentioned earlier. I got to meet Nick Prolix for the first time, so I finally put a face to the name. He does not look like his Twitter avatar, because his Twitter avatar is currently a drawing of a raincoat, so, you know. But no, the Swansea Comics Collective, the guys behind Copperellian, they were there. Rick Webber, it was good to see them. Pretty much Cardiff was, if someone's in indie comics, there's a good chance they were at Cardiff. Naturally, Steve Tanner, Flintlock, who came out for drinks the night before, was also there. Mark Adams was there with all of his comics, so Mandy the Monster Hunter and such. Yeah, Joe Glass with The Pride. We were going to go see Spider-Man on the Friday, Spider-Man Homecoming, but my goddamn trains got delayed. The train journey. Now, here's the point. So, originally it was going to be a really tight, like, 5-minute tops changeover window to, you know, get on the right train at Bath and then continue on to Cardiff. And I get there and the train's delayed by 22 minutes. Then we get on the train and we're told we won't be arriving into Cardiff until 2 o'clock, which is about an hour late, because the train is only running on 2 out of 3 engines, which is why it was late arriving in the first place. And obviously they can't do as much speed on that. But that every other train behind them would now be delayed, because the next train can only go as fast as the train I was on was going, so it didn't, you know, ram into the back of it. So that was chaotic. You know, you can always trust Great Western Railway to cock it up. And actually, when we talk about heading home, they really fucked up. So, I don't know if I've really sworn properly in this before, but, you know, I'm not re-recording however many, this has been like 10, 15 minutes or so, not re-recording that just to take out one swear. Anywho, there were 2 other pickups. Neither of them were small press. So the first, technically, I bought just after. So it was like, I like to have something to read on the bus to and from work. So I picked this up before going to work. And it was Spider-Man Renew Your Vows. So this I've been curious about. When it came out in floppies, I was like, I don't know if this is going to be a mini-series or if they're going to do that annoying thing where they're like, this has a limited shelf life until it sells well, and then we'll just do like 100 of them. So no, you've got Ryan Stegman. Goddamn, Ryan Stegman's artwork. And it's the... You know when they did One More Day, Brand New Day, and everyone got really annoyed at the gut punch of Mephistos telling Spider-Man, here's the child you and Mary Jane will now never have because of the really dumb decision you just made. Well, this is a universe where Spider-Man and Mary Jane Mary Jane are still married, and they have had that kid, and the whole family has spider powers. And I'm eager to read it. Apparently, it's got a couple of unnecessary. Sorry, I have to have the lights on in this room because it's now too late in the day for the natural light. But I also have to have the windows closed because of the noise of the traffic outside being picked up on my microphone. But that then means it gets really goddamn hot in here, especially with the PC on so that the webcam will work. And that makes me sweat like a criminal in the stands. Right. Whew. Anyway. Where was I? Yeah, so apparently it takes a couple of unnecessary shots at Dan Slott's run and the whole, brand new day right the way through to Peter Parker now being some kind of tech genius billionaire with his own company. So I've yet to read it, so we'll see if those unnecessary shots come or not, but I'm hoping for a fun time. It all sounds very fan-servicey, so count me as excited. The next one was a bit of a surprise, and I didn't know about picking it up. It was actually Tony from Awesome Comics Past. Awesome Comics Past? Awesome Comics Podcast. Oh, man. I tell you, my head is... You can probably hear in my voice that I am not 100%, and my head is just floating. So, Essentials Avengers number 9. He was just talking to me about the creators that are in it. Now, when Tony starts talking about comics history, I always feel like a bit of a fraud, because I jumped in... my route into comics... I'm just trying to make sure the actual... There you go. I'm just trying to make sure you can see it. Big, thick old thing. Look at that. Big, thick old thing. £3. And that was from Mike Orwood. So, £3. Who can complain at that? And he was just talking to me about the history and the creators that are in it. And, whenever he talks about comics past, I feel like an absolute fraud. I'm just going to take these off. These are for distance, primarily. And I am talking to a webcam that is... probably about 24 inches from my face. I have no depth perception, but probably about 24 inches from my face. There's no distance involved here. Let's just... And they're making... because they're thick frames, I sweat behind the frames, and you don't need to know this, but... Yeah. Just... Ugh. So anyway, he gave me the push to pick it up, and I'm really glad he did. That is going to take a while to get through. So... Those were the pickups. The day itself, there was an awesome atmosphere, very clearly comics focused. Anyone who's anyone in indie comics seemed to be there. It coincided with Small Press Day in the UK, which is fantastic. Is one of the most dedicated and passionate convention organisers I've ever seen. Footfall was kind of low. So it was a trickle of people coming throughout the day. So you sort of had to maximize any opportunities for sales. However, when I was looking at doing Cardiff, my friends were very upfront with me who had done previous years and said, look, you're going to have a great time, but you're not going to make any money. So that was the expectation I had, and like I've said countless times before, well, not countless, we're only a few weeks into this, you probably can go back and count, but, my day job sorts out the bills. This is a hobby. I treat it like gambling. I don't spend anything that I wouldn't be prepared to lose. So, there's that. So let's actually... Do you want to hear the figures? Let's hear the figures, shall we? So... I've got these written down, so you will see me looking off to the side. A table was £30, which is actually, for a one-day convention, small press table, is really, really good. Nail right on the head. The train was £33, although I only ended up using that one way for reasons we'll get into. The hotel was £62, which is actually quite reasonable. And if I was able to get there for the setup time, then I wouldn't have needed a hotel at all. So that cost really only applies to a select few. I spent approximately £15 on food over the weekend. And there was £10 given to a friend for petrol. Now, what I'm not including in any of that is leisurely spend, so I did go out for a few drinks both evenings. I did pick up a few bits for myself in town while I was in Cardiff, just having a look around like HMV and such. I did buy some small press books and, a badge. None of that is included in my cost because that was all optional leisurely spend that I chose to make. So in total, my costs came to £150. Now, I sold 4 copies of Unfamiliar Skies issue 1, which is my current book, my main book, the book I'm really pushing, and 2 copies of Joe Cape issue 1, which is the first part of my previous 3-issue series, and I then sold another 5 copies of Unfamiliar Skies issue 1 at cost to a representative of a comic shop who, don't worry, we'll talk about Sarah Harris because she's an awesome friend to indie comics, and the world is a much better place for having her, so she will be getting some high praise later on. But yeah, sold 5 copies to her at cost for a comic shop in Swindon. So in total my sales were bang on £30. So I covered the table. I didn't cover the train, the hotel, the food, or the petrol money that I ended up giving Sarah. So in terms of sales, it's a £120 loss. However, I had a really good time. So, you know what? I don't care that I was 120 down. I don't mind. You know what? 120 for what turned out to be a really good weekend. Fine by me. So, and I think Iz put on a fantastic show. Everyone enjoyed themselves. Everyone. And, talking to other indie creators, there is a downturn in general. Everyone was talking about it. There are too many events. People can't stockpile their spending money. They assume if they don't get it this weekend, they can just get it next weekend at something else. Sort of the spectacle and the urgency and sort of the, ooh, this is rare and special, those elements have been taken out of Comic-Cons currently. It's, to the point that there's even an event called Not Another Comic-Con. That's, that bubble will eventually burst, and the spectators and the people after a quick cash grab, which do exist, they will fade away. And it is events like this, events like Iz's, with true heart and soul and passion, that I hope are the ones who remain and survive. I was having quite an in-depth discussion about this earlier today with Stuart Mulrain, who's one of the organisers behind the True Believers Comic Festival. And that will be in February in Cheltenham. They do have a summer event coming up that you should check out as well. So about this, and we seem to be more or less on the same page there. What was really nice is that we went for drinks afterwards, because it was Sarah Dunkerton's birthday on Sunday, which was the day after CICE, but the day before me recording. So as of recording, her birthday was yesterday, so happy birthday again, Sarah. And a whole bunch of us went there, and Iz actually got a round of applause when she walked into the pub for the great job that she did with the convention, and I just thought that was really well deserved. I also got to see Danny Abram and her partner Ian. Danny is an animator who did Razorhawk and Worrywart, and Worrywart is an amazing book that through sort of blog entries on my website and various other things I've talked about a couple of times. It's just, if you can get hold of it, then please do. It's fantastic. But I had a good sort of 40-minute chat with Danny at my table, and then naturally she was in the pub afterwards, so that was really fun. The sense of community around the event was really strong, and it was like everyone just got together and had a good time, and it was just really nice to see everybody. John Locke and Nick Angel from Big Punch Studios, Danny Abram, Sarah Millman, Sean Jefferson, Vince Hunt, Sean Doby of Descending Outlands. There are simply too many to name. And they were all, present, accounted for, and in good spirits. So I had an absolute blast. It's definitely a show that I would want to do again. I'm already excited for next year, so that's a fantastic thing. Now, where was my thought train going with that? Sarah Harris came and chatted with me. She went round the event, saw a ton of people. Susie Gander and her partner Chris. Susie's behind a comic called Periwinkle about fighting cancer that is launching at Nottingham Comic Con in October. I strongly suggest you check that out. They came, they had a chat with me, they had a chat with Danny, they had a great day just talking to everyone as civilians/punters. It was really good to see them too. Sorry to interrupt Sarah's praise, but I didn't want to forget to mention Susie because I'm scared. Like, I am now sweating to the point that it is not just the heat in here. It is still this con crud cold. I do not know why I went to work today. I feel awful. So, yeah, the editing may be sloppy on this as well, which I'm just going to apologize for here and now. I am not in a good shape right now. Not in a good shape. I can't even talk. But no. Sarah came, had a good chat about an event that she's doing in Swindon to promote small press. You've got a good 7 or 8 indie creators, most of whom were at Cardiff this past weekend. They're doing a signing at Incredible Comics in Swindon the 15th of July. I think it's between 1 and 4. If you're in the area, go take a look. So she's put a lot of work into that, a hell of a lot of work. And she has been championing small press and indie books every which way she can. She lives relatively local to me as well. Now, she came through big time. Basically, there was some palaver with my trains home. They were doing repair works, which I didn't know about ahead of time. And that started interfering with all the trains, some of them getting cancelled, some of them getting diverted, some of them being changed for bus replacement services. What it basically meant was that I would have to go to a town or village or two over from where I live, and then my other half would have to get the kids up at 9:30, or just not let them go to sleep. I don't know which would have been worse. Probably waking them up again would have been worse. And then drive out to get me at 9:30, 10 o'clock at night, and then drive back. Sarah heard about that and was like, no, that's silly. It's a relatively short detour for me to drop you on my way back to Swindon. So I got a lift with her. I insisted on giving her some petrol money. She didn't want the petrol money. She didn't expect petrol money. I insisted on giving it to her because she is too often too kind to too many people. And I would never want to see anyone taking the piss out of Sarah because it's she's just so full of goodness. Anyways, I'm quite a... my other half tells me I'm a grumpy, cynical old 52-year-old stuck inside a 28-year-old's body. Because I don't know, I always, if I see goodness in the world, I'm like, how long until someone's an utter asshole to the good thing, and then the good thing gets ruined. And, the world is better for having Sarah Harris in it. So thank you again, Sarah, for that. And I just really hope no one ever takes the piss out of you. I hope no one ever, just keep being nice to people, but just be wary as well. I don't know what I'm saying with that, I really don't. And if anyone ever does take the piss out of you, or, takes things for granted, then point me their way, and I will probably do nothing about it because my arms are sticks and I've never really been in a proper fight. At least not one where I've been participating. I've been one where I've just been getting pummeled, but not one where I've actively fought back. Yeah, I'm on a real tangent. I should probably get some medicine. I should really get some medicine. Anyway, no, so Great Western Railways completely fucked up my route home. It actually made me think quite a lot about a few things with conventions, actually. Because I'm doing Nottingham in October, and actually getting to and from Nottingham is going to be a pain in the ass. So, essentially, I have no depth perception. I cannot drive. So, when you're born, your eyes develop, and they continue developing up till age 8. And then it's pretty much downhill from there. So if you're more than 8 years old watching this, and you damn well better be, don't want anyone younger than 8 watching these. I don't even want 8-year-olds watching these. Like, you better be 18 before watching these if I'm now saying fuck. Anyway, everyone had forgotten about that, and I'm just bringing it back up. Anyway, my right eye, fine, got on with it. My right eye is absolutely fine. My left eye went, nah, don't feel like it, not gonna. And for that reason, my left eye is underdeveloped to the point of being considered legally blind, even if not totally blind, which are apparently two different things. But the way depth perception works is it's where your two lines of sight cross over. Your brain makes a calculation based on that, and that is distance. Now, I've only got the one line of sight. It causes a bunch of issues. My center of gravity is over here, because the center of my vision is here. So I purposefully have to, like, sit on one side of a cinema. You know, I will sit over to the left so that, you know, it sort of works out that I'm looking at the screen dead on. It makes me a nervous passenger sometimes. Like, I will just look at a phone or listen to music or talk the driver's ear off so that I'm not paying any attention to the road, because I will just freak out over not knowing how close we are to lorries and things like that. If I want to grab a cup, I reach out for it, and when my thumb hits the front of the cup, my fingers grip the back. Really subtle, no one notices what I'm doing. I've now explained it, so everyone's going to be looking out for that. But, like, I walk more heavily on one side than the other, so I wear through one shoe faster. I've never been able to ride a bike because I just can't keep my balance on it. My center of gravity is over here, so I always get on a bike and go, whoa! Same with pogo sticks. I mean, if you want something funny to watch, put me on a pogo stick. These are not for my left eye. These are for my right eye. So essentially, there's no lens or anything in the left because there's no point. The left eye doesn't work. It's far too late to do anything about it. It's hereditary, as my daughter has the same issue. However, there's new things they can try with her that they didn't try when I was younger, and she's seeing improvements. So hopefully she won't end up like me. They're trying to stimulate the development, basically. So the lens is actually for the right, because where my right eye has been doing the heavy lifting, it's now starting to worsen through the extra strain. So it's not by much at the moment. I think it went from like 20 to 19. So these aren't doing a whole lot of work, but it is a situation where we need these to take the strain off a bit and just compensate for the deterioration. But long story short, I don't drive. I will never drive. Now, my partner my fiancée, I should say, used to drive me to cons. She used to man the table with me. However, since we've had kids, that's not been appropriate. She stayed home with the kids, and I've gone solo. Reason being is that at their ages, we cannot reasonably expect them to, you know, sit still, behave, or otherwise be entertained for that long. It's not fair to them. So I've been doing conventions solo, but what that means is I'm then reliant on, you know, coaches, trains, buses, occasionally a taxi. You know, to get to Thought Bubble in Leeds was 8 hours on a coach each way, when it would have been 4.5 hours in a car. It just strikes me that maybe I need a con buddy. Maybe I need someone who I regularly car share with, regularly, have a table next to. Sort of like how Nick and John started before they formed Big Punch. Certainly how they operate now, that they're one sort of big umbrella. I know Vince Hunt and Sean Doby have a similar thing where they car share and get tables next to each other. And who was it Sarah Millman did that with? Anastasia Catress, I think she did that with. And at other times Sean Jefferson, if I'm remembering right. So, and I must admit, I sort of sometimes look at and this is why I would like to do, I think, a collaboration as well, because I sometimes look at the bonds those people have, and I'd be lying if I said I didn't get a little bit jealous at times. Like, my best friend is at least a 4.5 hour drive away, a good 6-7 hours on public transport, and he's got the potential in him to write and collaborate on a comic, but he's really apathetic. He doesn't have the drive or the motivation, and damn it, I've tried. Plus, with us being such a distance away, we would be coming to a con from, different areas altogether, and it would sort of defeat the point of traveling together, because we wouldn't be. So no, I mean, I'm in the Wiltshire area. I'm open to that, is I guess what I'm saying. Plus, I will be incredibly honest in saying that since moving to Wiltshire, I'm originally from Norfolk. Most of my friends are still in Norfolk. I've done a very bad job of making friends, and that's mostly on me, I'll admit. I can be an arsehole, and I can be difficult to deal with. But I've done a very bad job of making friends since moving to Wiltshire. So I would love to make some more. I don't know how much more open and honest you can get on that one. But yeah, no. I've completely lost my train of thought. We're no longer talking about CICE, really, are we? But no, I do need to rethink my approach and how I'm going to do conventions going forward, because I have missed doing them, and I want to do more of them. I just need to make it practical for everyone, including my fiancé and my kids, because I cannot ask them to come collect me from, a couple of towns over at stupid o'clock at night. Maybe it means getting a hotel room for Saturday night as well, and then coming back midday on the Sunday. Maybe that's what it means, and it's just then each convention has an increased cost, so then I do fewer conventions to balance that out, because there's only so much budget I can put aside for conventions. I don't know, I'll figure it out. But overall, Iz did a fantastic job. Cardiff was a really fun show, and, fingers crossed they run again next year. I really want them to come back next year. And if they do, everyone, please attend. I've been a slightly delirious, sickly Sam. Thank you very much for watching. I've not had to do any jump cuts, and I will see you next week. Oh, thank fuck I'm done.